Hi, everybody, and welcome. Uh, Welcome to everyone who is associated with the Chatfield Edge already, or if you're new to us, we want to welcome you as well. My name's David Hessen, and I'm the Director of Programs here at the Chatfield Edge. And this is the fifth in a series of webinars that we originally designed to support the people in our community that we were working with, but have begun to broaden that out into the wider community at large, especially our students who are at different points on their educational journeys. So we have students who are just starting out, just deciding what programs to apply to. Many are balancing work and life as they try and go to school, and some who have recently graduated and are moving into the workforce. So whether you're a mentor or a scholar or just a friend or community member, we know that you're balancing a lot: jobs, schools, family, friends, the list goes on, right? So tonight's webinar will focus on recognizing things that cause you stress in your life, as well as ways you can prioritize your own self-care. So just a few housekeeping items. The presentation will run 30 to 40 minutes or so, and then the floor will be open for questions. While you're watching, we ask that you please mute your microphone, especially if you have pets, kids, other noise in the background. We will have some polls and interactive exercises, so be ready to jump in and participate with those. And yes, there'll be questions at the end, but if things pop up in your brain and you're afraid you'll forget it, just jot it right down into the chat box. Bob, I think, is going to monitor the chat box. So, um, we'll see those questions and we'll be able to answer them as well when it comes to the question and answer. So I'm going to turn it over now to the presenter for tonight. Whitney Richardson is a licensed clinical counselor and works at the University of Cincinnati, and she is going to take care of our presentation. So Whitney, it is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. I'm very happy to be here. This is a really wonderful opportunity just to share about how our brains work and how we can take care of ourselves. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of this. Yes, I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor in Kentucky and Ohio, and I'm a certified clinical trauma professional. And I'm with University of Cincinnati right now as the assistant director of embedded services. But I've sort of done the gamut of clinical work in my time. I worked with kids and families in homes and in schools. I worked in therapeutic foster care, and I've spent the last 10 years working in college counseling. So lots of opportunity to learn about stress and to teach about stress and to try to take some of my own advice about stress management as well. All right. Could I have a thumbs up from somebody that they can see the slides? Wonderful. Thank you. So yes, this is what we're going to learn about today. So we're going to learn about the impact of stress on our brains and our bodies. And hopefully when you leave, you're going to have some awareness of some warning signs of stress in your own brain and body and an increased awareness of your personal stress response. We're going to talk about some evidence-based stress reduction techniques, as well as get you thinking about a personalized self-care plan moving forward. So the goal of today, I'm going to share a lot of information with you, but the goal is to really pick the pieces that feel relevant and resonate with you to figure out how to take them forward and implement them in a meaningful way. So there may be strategies we talk about that you've tried or for you just don't feel like a good fit, and that's okay. My hope is that this is just a jumping off point for people to think about their own stress management and self-care. And if you're a mentor, you're an educator, you're a helper in some way, it's also great to learn about the stress responses because sometimes we can see those warning signs in other people, and it lets us know how we can help them, support them, or at least experience some compassion towards them if they are going through some level of stress and that's showing up behaviorally or emotionally. I always like to start at the beginning when I talk about stress because I think we all sort of have an idea of what it is. We definitely know what it feels like. But when we talk about stress, we really usually talk about it in the way of like how to not have it and how to get rid of it. And so I think going backwards to understand what stress really is, how it shows up, what it means for us helps us then plan better for how we want to either prevent it or cope with it. So we're going to talk about a couple of different pathways here. We're going to talk about some proactive pathways to manage stress and some reactive pathways, which is typically where our brain goes, right? Like we start to feel stress and then we're like, what do I do about this? So we're going to think about it from both directions to try to get a good stress management plan for you. But where we start is what is stress? And a lot of us think about stress as like that feeling that we get in our stomach, like muscle tension, we like feel overwhelmed, we feel a sense of urgency, and that is what it is. But it's a little more than that. So, stress is really just our body and our brain's reaction to some kind of external stimuli. So, something happens outside of us, and that triggers a number of responses emotionally, physically, cognitively, behaviorally sometimes. If there's too little stress, too little stimuli, we have a much lower reaction, right? So, that green side of that curve, right? Think about something that you have to do, but you don't have to do it for a year. You're not going to have a lot of like attention or motivation or arousal related to that thing. But think about something that you have to do in the next 5 minutes. You're going to attend to it, right? If it's something that maybe is, tied to performance or tied to something important for you, you might start to have a reaction about that. When we talk about stress, usually people are thinking about this red part of this curve, but today I really want us to focus on like that orange part because, and people have heard me say this many times, and it sounds like a cliche. My opinion is the best stress management tool we can have is being proactive and being preventative. So we really want to think about what can we do in this sort of yellow to orange phase. So learning our early warning signs to reduce the possibility of it getting into that red phase. Because once it gets into that red phase, we're sort of riding the roller coaster down the hill, right? Like it's happening. We're just trying our best to like hang on and get to the bottom. But we want to feel like we have more control and we can kind of divert the roller coaster of the path that we want it to take. So to be able to think about that orange place and have those early warning signs, we want to think about what are the common stressors for us. So there are stressors that are pretty common across the board for most people, but then there are stressors that can be unique to each individual based on your experiences, your history, your values, your priorities. But what we see the most when it comes to stressors, so those external things that create that biological, emotional, cognitive response, would be things like expectations. So high expectations of ourselves, high expectations of the people around us or the system around us, things that feel like they're difficult to achieve. Sometimes the culture, the environment we're in can create stress for us if we feel like it's a mismatch with our values, with our identity, with our capacity, or if there's belief systems that are a mismatch for us. Adjustments and transition can definitely be stressors. And I think that's important to point out because a lot of times when people come see me, they will be showing all the signs and symptoms of stress and maybe even burnout, but they'll say to me, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I've got such good things happening, right? I'm about to graduate, or I got a new job, or I finally, completed that assignment that I was really working hard on, or I'm in a new relationship. And what we don't realize is the external stimuli doesn't have to be a bad thing to cause us stress. Sometimes it can be something really good, but that creates a life change or a life adjustment. We have to reorganize ourselves around it, and that creates a stress response in our body. Some of the top stressors for most people would be like financial strain, relationships, balancing roles and tasks. That's a big one. If you feel like the things you have to do and the ways you have to show up outpace your capacity or your time to do it, that can be incredibly stressful. Lack of resources, so inability to meet basic needs, and time management. We're going to talk about time management in a little bit because no, we can't create more time, but maybe we can find ways to utilize the time we have that fits better for us. So our first poll question, what stressor impacts your life the most? Yeah, so for most people, time management, which really fits because I think that goes along with balancing roles and high expectations. A lot of us have a lot to do, and trying to fit it in can be really overwhelming and can cause that feeling of um, like feeling stuck or helpless because it's like, how am I supposed to get all of this done in the time that's allotted? Thank you all for participating in that. So as we think about that yellow-orange zone, it's helpful for us to know how we respond to stress. And again, there's things that can show up for everybody, but everybody's stress response is unique to them, but also unique to each situation. So you may see some commonalities in your stress response across the board, but also different situations might bring out different responses from you. And it's helpful to know what's happening in your brain and your body once you can give yourself compassion and understanding, but also so you can plan how you want to deal with it. So when we think about stress, we want to think about the nervous system. The nervous system is sort of like one of the main characters in your body that helps you regulate and function all sort of the important parts, right? Eating, breathing, sleeping, digestion. But it also sort of houses what we would traditionally call your fight flight response, which most people understand that and know what that means, right? It's your body's reaction to something that feels threatening or overwhelming. So stress creates a fight flight response for us in our nervous system. What we don't often talk about is these other responses that our nervous system can have. So in addition to fight, flight, we can also have freeze and fawn. So we'll go over those a little bit. And I want you to think about what might show up for you, what those early warning signs of stress would be and how they would show up in your nervous system response. So fight is one we know a lot. It doesn't necessarily mean aggression. Your fight response is really just your body's movement towards whatever the stimuli is. So it could be something like anger or irritability, an argument, a disagreement, defensiveness. It could be assertiveness and advocacy, right? We are moving towards whatever that stimuli is. Flight response is sort of what we think, right? It's literally running away, but also figuratively, emotionally, cognitively running away. So avoidance, maybe procrastination, putting something off. What people don't realize can be a flight response is staying busy. So if you ever know that person who's like constantly busy and they're constantly doing things and the space is always kind of filled up, but maybe they're not doing the things that they need to be doing to deal with their stress, or they're just doing everything else. So yeah, the dishes in the kitchen are super stressing me out, but I cleaned the rest of my house today. Oh, and now I don't have time to do the dishes. So that's a flight response. Freeze is when our brain sort of reaches the level of capacity and overwhelm and disconnects from it. So you can kind of get that shut down, zone out mode, right? Where people will say, I brain fog, or I kind of zoned out, or I numbed out. We see that a lot with social media, where people are scrolling on social media. And has this ever happened to you where you think you've been doing it for 5 minutes and it's really been 30, and where did the time go? I didn't even know it was passing. That might be a freeze response and a stress reaction. And then fawn response is something that I think is really interesting, because some of these things people might think of as really positive. And again, none of these responses are positive or negative. They just are your instinctual bodily brain response to a stimuli. But fawn response looks more like people pleasing, being passive, masking. So we're not really showing our genuine, true reactions. We're sort of putting on a performance to sort of be in the situation that we're in. Maybe we're not speaking up for ourselves, or we're being agreeable. It is helpful to be collaborative, and it's definitely helpful and in lots of places to be agreeable. But when that happens at the expense of ourselves, then that sometimes can enhance or increase our stress response. Stress also shows up emotionally, physically, cognitively, and behaviorally. So some things we would see in that orange area of the curve emotionally would be like changes in mood. So all of these I want you to think about as far as like a change from a baseline. So whatever's typical for you, we would be looking for something to be different. If I'm just an irritable person, like on any given day, that might not be a stress response for me. But if I'm typically pretty chipper, pretty positive, like my mood's pretty stable, and I've become pretty consistently irritable, something's happening for me. And I may not even really be aware of it. It may actually be my partner or my children being like, "Oh, why are you snapping at me?" And I'm like, "Oh, did I do that?" And it's a good moment for me to check in. So mood changes from irritability to tearfulness, maybe shifts in like their experience of emotions. So either experiencing them in an overly reactive way, so a heightened emotion, or a blunted way, so a more numb emotion where something isn't impacting you as much as you thought. Disinterest, so things that typically interest us or we would be drawn to don't feel that interesting or enjoyable anymore, or anxiety. And it's important to know that anxiety and stress are different. So again, stress is our bodily and brain response to an external stimuli, and anxiety is our internal response to a perceived threat. Anxiety is kind of like our threat response system, but it could be a perceived threat or a real threat. So stress can create anxiety, but we can also have anxiety without being under stress. Physical responses would be like change in hygiene behaviors, definitely changes in eating and sleeping patterns. So fluctuation of maybe increased appetite, decreased appetite, trouble falling asleep, waking up a lot. Sometimes people have increased dreams or more vivid dreams or nightmares, or getting stuck awake, or maybe being increasingly fatigued. So low energy and then you're sleeping more. Stress also shows up in like the aches and pains. So one of those nervous system responses in your fight flight response is muscle tension. Our body gets ready and prepared for a threat. So we clench our muscles, right? Maybe we clench our jaw. It increases our heart rate. So we get rapid breathing. Maybe it changes our body temperature. So we sweat or we feel warm. And all of that over time can create some aches and pains because you're holding some tension and pressure in parts of your body that maybe you don't realize. So we get headaches, stomach pain, joint pain. And then the cognitive responses could be like difficulty making decisions. So things that felt really easy to decide can feel really hard. Like if I have to, decide where we go for dinner one more time, I'm going to lose it because decisions can become very, very challenging when your body's dealing with just regulating and managing stress. Poor concentration, that's a warning sign for me. If something that I can typically sit down, focus in on, knock out in 10 minutes takes me 30 minutes to get into it, I'm like, oh, something's happening there. Rapid thoughts, so like kind of those racing, spiraling thoughts, and worry. Worry is a symptom of anxiety. Worry is sort of the thought pattern around the what ifs and bad things that can happen. And anxiety is more of the emotion, the fear of the uncertainty and the threat. Behaviorally, what this could look like at school or work or in relationships would be like declining performance. So if someone was performing a certain way and that really shifts, changes in attendance or withdrawal socially. So you're not seeing them as much anymore, or they're declining invitations or not attending things. Requests for extension, delaying sort of starts and stops, avoidance of certain things. We talked about anxiety. We can see decreased engagement through that withdrawal, or sometimes increased connection seeking. Sometimes it can cause people to sort of move towards supports, to find ways to connect and get support and use their resources. Rumination is just a word for kind of overthinking and thinking about something over and over again in a repetitive way. I know sometimes when I'm stressed about something coming up, my brain kind of focuses on it and I get stuck in a loop around it. And then feelings of dread. So that feeling, when someone says, oh, I really have a hard time showing up to my job, and I sit in my car for 20 minutes just to hype myself up and I feel dread about that, that's a sign of stress. Something's happening at work that's really, really creating a significant stress response for you. So poll two, we're going to have you select two things, select two warning signs that indicate you are experiencing stress. So think about not what I'm really, really stressed, not red zone. Think about orange zone. What do you notice first? Irritability, number one. That's my cue right there. Is when I start to get a little more testy, like things start to get on my nerves a little bit more than they typically would. Like, oh gosh, I need to check in about that. Um, so irritability number one, and then it looks like avoidance procrastination number two. Absolutely. And then we have sleep, concentration, worry, feeling pressured or a sense of urgency. Yep. And headaches. Thank you all. All right. So we talked about what is stress? How does it impact our brain? What responses show up? What are we looking for to understand when we are feeling stressed or we're getting in that orange zone? And now we're going to talk about coping a little bit. So some of these coping strategies are those reactive strategies. So things we can do when we're stressed to help bring the stress down. But some of them are really wonderful, ongoing, proactive strategies that the more that you do them, even when you're not stressed, you sort of build up a resilience or like kind of an internal armor to the stress that's coming at you. Um, the first one that we always talk about is deep breathing. So diaphragmatic breathing, it's breathing into your diaphragm to get a nice, deep, restorative breath. We're not breathing into our chest because that one isn't going to do the trick for us, but it also could cause hyperventilation. This QR code is a QR code for a box breathing video. Box breathing is just a structured breathing technique where you visualize the sides of the box. And as you breathe in, you follow the top line of the box. As you breathe out, you follow the side. You breathe in, you follow the bottom, and you make a square in your mind, or you follow the square if you're watching a video as you breathe in and out. There's also breathing by counting. So you're counting 1, 2, 3 in and 1, 2, 3 out. A trick with deep breathing, if you don't know if you're doing it right or if it's not feeling right, is to focus more on your exhale than your inhale. Sometimes we want to think about take a big inhale, right? And then we're all sort of full of breath in our shoulders and our chest. And then we can kind of get out of breath really easily. So you just want to take a normal inhale and then think about exhaling 1 beat longer than you inhaled. That will help you then get a deeper inhale without forcing it. The reason we recommend deep breathing is a wonderful proactive strategy, but also a reactive strategy, is because it helps regulate that sympathetic nervous system response, that fight flight response. It really helps try to switch those biological cues to shift your nervous system into regulation and calming down. So that rest, digest, parasympathetic nervous system response is what we're trying to trigger with deep breathing. It's important to know that all of these strategies are helpful to get you through a hard moment or helpful to build some self-care and resiliency, but they're not necessarily meant to solve all the problems causing stress, right? Because those things are outside of us and those things might take time to work through, supports and other resources. This is to use when you need it to help bring the intensity down. One other evidence-based practice that I like to talk about is mindfulness practices. When people think about mindfulness, sometimes they think about meditation, and mindfulness is a form of meditation, or vice versa, depending on what literature you're reading, the chicken or the egg, kind of with what came first. Mindfulness is not necessarily just emptying your brain. Mindfulness is any action that you take to be present in the moment, present in your brain and body. So you don't necessarily need to clear your whole head to be mindful. You can just be attending and attuning to what's happening with you in the moment, what thoughts are running through your head, what sensations you're having, and you're being mindful. There's lots of mindfulness practices out there. You can Google it. I am a fan of YouTube. If you use credible resources on YouTube, there's lots and lots of videos on YouTube around deep breathing and mindfulness, as well as relaxation techniques. One that I like to point out is progressive muscle relaxation. A lot of us think that just by thinking relax, we've relaxed, and we haven't, because sometimes we carry chronic stress and tension in our bodies, as I talked about. Sometimes you have to create the tension to force the release, and that's what progressive muscle relaxation does. Another technique I like to suggest are grounding strategies. Grounding strategies are any activity or action that uses internal or external stimuli to move you away from negative or distressing emotional experiences. They're present focus and it's active engagement. So again, it's something that can really get you in the here and now in your body to help flip that switch from fight, flight to regulation. Because when we're stressed out, we're usually in this place of like what's already happened or what hasn't happened yet. And we're not really in the place of the present and of being in control. And that's where we need our brain to be able to problem solve and have long-term thinking and regulate our emotions. So grounding strategies, breathing really helps us get into that present-minded place. And this QR code can take you to some grounding techniques. Some other things to think about that feel really simple, but can be actually really challenging when we think about stress management would be maintaining our basic needs. When we're under stress, I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed out, it's like the first thing that goes. Like, did I pack my lunch? Did I bring my water bottle? I don't know. I'm so sort of like overwhelmed that I'm not thinking about the basic things that I need to do. And my body really, really needs that routine and consistency to be able to regulate this situation that I'm in. So if we want our bodies to be able to handle hard things, we have to give our body what it needs to do its basic functioning to do the hard stuff. So eating regularly, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're moving your body can be really, really helpful basic tools to bring that stress response down. Social support's really important. Finding someone to talk to that can listen and that can get you, even if you're not talking about the stressor, finding a moment to like laugh or disconnect can be incredibly healing and therapeutic. And then emotional expression. So finding ways to release or get out some of those feelings that are coming up as you're dealing with the stressor. Again, a lot of the times the stressor isn't something we can sort of resolve in the snap of a finger, which is challenging. And so we have lots of feelings that will build up and will sort of swirl around in us. And we want to find a way to healthily release those. And so that could be through social support, but that could be through other forms of emotional expression, journaling, art making, music, doing something creative. I always say do something from start to finish. If you feel like you are under stress and things are out of your control right now, find one simple thing that you can start and that has an ending and an outcome that you can see. And that helps you feel in control, helps you feel like you did something, and it gives you some of those like endorphins and that dopamine hit that we really need when we're under stress. The other thing to think about is time management. Um, like I said earlier, we can't invent more time. I really, really wish we could, but we can figure out the best way to use our time that aligns with our goals and our priorities. So this is the Eisenhower decision matrix. This helps us prioritize our tasks. So we find ways to engage in tasks that have value and meaning for us or the most important or most urgent instead of being distracted, which can easily happen into the things that maybe take up time but don't meet our goals. Another time management strategy is the get ready, do done method. This is helpful if you need some support in like planning out the steps. So stress creates a sense of urgency. And so we tend to tackle big things in one bite. And this is a way to sort of tackle a big thing one step at a time. And you can really plan out what's the first, second, third thing that happens. My recommendation, if you use the get ready, do done method, is start it done. Visualize what the outcome looks like first and then work backwards from there. That sometimes helps you come up with more realistic steps and materials that you need to take to get to the end. So lastly, we're going to talk about self-care, and self-care is big in our culture and our community, which I love, but a lot of times people think self-care means, like you take a bath and you light a candle, and that is what self-care is. But self-care for your mental health and stress management is really any action that you take on a regular, consistent basis that is going to help you take a moment and take care of you. So self-care is not about the thing. Stress management's not about the thing you do. It's about understanding what you need and moving forward with intention about what's going to meet that goal for you in that moment. So self-care, whatever it is you choose to do, is something we do proactively. We want it to be a part of our routine no matter what we're feeling, because remember, that's going to build resiliency and armor for when the hard things happen. And also when the hard things happen, I don't have it in my brain to think of adding something new. That's like the last thing I need. So if you have self-care as a part of your routine, you're already doing it and you don't have to think about adding another step. We want it to be accessible, so something that you can do easily on a regular basis, something you can be consistent with that's sustainable, and something that aligns with like who you are and what's meaningful for you. So what self-care might be for someone else might not mean anything to me and therefore might not work for me. So it takes a little bit of creativity and maybe trial and error to figure out what that looks like. If you need help figuring out what can be part of your self-care routine, you can think about the dimensions of wellness. These are sort of all the parts of us as a human that need attention for us to be like a well, healthy person. A lot of times when we think about self-care, we think about the physical part, right? Like movement, hygiene, or the emotional part. But there's other parts of you that need attention that maybe need a little self-care, right? How do we feel about our job? How do we feel in our job? Are we satisfied? What about our environment? How does our environment feel around us? And how does our environment make us feel? And are there small tweaks in our self-care routine that can help us feel more aligned and settled and calm in our environment? Social self-care, spiritual self-care, all of those can be things you think about in your self-care plan to figure out what am I missing that will help me feel fully whole and connected with myself, but also build that resiliency to manage stress. Some self-care examples that I came up with in some of those categories, physical self-care. It's important to note that when we talk about physical self-care, that could be regular exercise. But the research shows that it doesn't have to be some kind of specific exercise for you to get mental health benefits. The research shows that any kind of regular movement of your body is going to give you benefits to your mental health and stress. So it's going to, do what it needs to do with all those chemicals in your brain to reduce your stress and help you release some of that tension. So that could just be walking. That could be stretching as you're, sitting and watching TV. As long as it's regular movement, you're doing great things for your brain. Spiritual self-care might be like connecting with nature, self-reflection, journaling. Social self-care could be, like I talked about, laughing, venting to your friends, but also could be setting boundaries. Remember, we said one of the stressors is expectations and relationships. So sometimes our self-care looks like saying no, which is really hard to do and could be a masterclass in and of itself, but can be really important when we're taking care of ourselves. So lastly, I want you to think about a self-care plan. So you can write it down or you can just think about this in your head. But remember those warning signs from before. What are your 3 early warning signs of stress or burnout? And think them through, write them down, because these are the things you want to look for when you're going to engage in self-care to help you know, am I being proactive? Am I in the yellow? Am I in the orange? Am I in the green? And then think about what's getting in the way of completing self-care. A lot of us have such good intentions, right? Beginning of the year, we're like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But maybe we come up with things that aren't sustainable or accessible to us. So what gets in the way? And that helps you plan something that's going to be more sustainable. So is it money? Is it time? If it's time, maybe we need self-care in 5-minute increments. I promise 5 minutes a day is going to do you much better than nothing. And then 3 self-care activities you want to commit to. So think about 3 things that you could do. And this could be an incremental plan. So maybe you start with 1 and add from there. But think about what feels attainable to you today. Is it something in your environment? Is it physical self-care? Is it, I'm going to take a minute to journal at the end of my day? Is it, I need to remember to like meet my friends to watch, I don't know, Love is Blind, when that comes out every Wednesday night. Whatever it is that you feel like you're needing to sustain yourself. And our last poll question. So select one self-care strategy that you can commit to practicing in the next 2 weeks. Lovely. So we have got a few people who are going to do daily deep breathing, which is really, really great. And we have journaling, connecting with friends, and physical movement. Some people like deep breathing, some people don't. And I think if you try it and you hate it and it doesn't help, don't do it. But again, I think it gives you that pause that you need sometimes when you get sort of stuck in survival mode of the ins and outs of your day to just like pause and check in with yourself, which can be really, really helpful in managing stress because sometimes things catch up with us before we realize it. So a daily deep breathing regimen of like 1 minute of deep breathing will allow you to check in with so much more. And I think can be a great self-care and attainable self-care strategy. All right. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time and attention today. And now I think we're going to go to questions.
I picked up a lot of tips. One thing I learned years ago, I used to get a twitch in my eye, especially around the end of the year and all the pressures that go with that. And I started just having my circuit breaker was a physical activity. So I'd take long walks or try to go on a run in the middle of the day and just get refreshed. And it would be a long walk, like, 40 minutes or something. And then be surprised and then get a lunch. Then when you come back, it's like the day starts over again. And you sort of shook some of that dust off of you when you went on that walk and left it behind.
That's right.
And that's worked for me for years.
Yeah, thank you. That's such a good example. It really is a nice reset. I mean, and there's like biologically lots of things happening when you engage in movement that kind of resets some things, and helps manage those emotions. Yeah, thanks for the example.
So I think, also I felt like I was in control. No matter how tough the situation might be, you're still in control.
Yeah.
And you have to reflect on that. Okay, well, if I'm in control, then what don't I like about this? What can I rearrange to maybe get some of that pressure out of the way and deal with it a little bit later when I'm better suited for it mentally? And I guess I've already harkened back to the saying, how do you eat an elephant? When you had a big job to do, one bite at a time. So you just break it down into smaller pieces.
Yes, I was thinking about that phrase when I was speaking tonight because I think about that phrase a lot, but sometimes people have not heard that before, so they're kind of like startled by it. But it's so true. And like stress sometimes makes everything collapse all together into sort of one big ball. And if we can pull it out in bites, things start to feel a little more manageable. Finding things that you can control, no matter how small, is going to be really, really important when you're managing sort of a high stress situation.
Whitney, I'm just curious if there's I'm coming at this from, thinking about this phone that I have in my hand. Oh, you can't see it because of the background, but
Yeah.
In technology, and I often hear so many people say, I'm so stressed out. And then we're all on our phones,
Yeah.
or we're running to, going online. Is there a lot of research around that? I mean, I just feel like I always say to my kids, well, when I was your age, I played outside, what's the research around what electronics and technology is doing in terms of stress?
Yeah, but you are right. There is a lot of research. So I will share what I have read, but I am no expert. So I will just put that out there. As far as using your phone for stress management, thinking specifically about social media, because that's typically where we all can sort of find ourselves. The way social media is created, the way that it works, the way that it interacts with you is not going to be the best way to release stress or to cope with your emotions, because social media is really reading you in a way of like providing you those like very quick pieces of content and information that will almost like overload the brain or shift us into that kind of freeze mode, right? That like shut down numbing mode. So we find ourselves like scrolling, but we're not taking in content. So anything that overloads capacity or shifts you into freeze is not going to help you actually release or regulate what you need to reduce the stress. Now, it's an easy thing to fall into. I mean, I think social media is made for us to fall into it. But it is a really important thing to think about. It's not that people can't scroll on social media, but increasing your intentionality with when you use it and how you use it is going to be really important. And if you are looking for a stress reliever, that unfortunately is not the thing. Our phones can have apps on them that can have techniques and videos and things that are intentionally for stress relief. Our phones can connect us to our friends and our loved ones. So, maybe we're FaceTiming somebody. Even if we're watching a short, funny video, right? One funny video, that's okay because that can be distraction or connection. But like the scrolling is where it becomes counterproductive.
I've even found I have the New York Times game app on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I loved it
Yeah.
because I love solving problems. So crossword puzzles were great. But then I'm also by nature an achiever. And so
Yeah.
I started becoming competitive.
Yeah.
I want to solve this New York Times puzzle in less than 8 minutes. Great, I did that. Now it's got to be less than. And so
It like
now
ups the ante, right?
it is.
Yeah.
Then I find my shoulders being stressed. So I guess it is about using it responsibly and limited, really, in a way
Yeah.
that can reduce stress.
Yeah, just I think having that awareness of like, how does this impact my brain, even though if it feels a certain way at first, like what am I noticing over longer term use? I just heard about this thing called a brick. Have you all heard about that? Where it really like it like locks down your phone and you can only open certain apps on your phone if you like scan this brick so you can put it away from you in another room or leave it at home. And then you can't, after a certain time, get into things on your phone, which is kind of amazing. And I think a lot of us can use that.
Yeah.
Wonder if that works with your email.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't that be nice?
Hey, well, I only saw one real question in the chat. Um, there were some good comments there from Christina and Chris about various things they liked, so I invite you all to check those out. But Amanda, it's something that I was going to say, that's why I'm bringing it up, asked about would she have the ability to share this recording? And the answer is yes. The recording will be posted on social media and a link will be emailed to you. So please share it, everybody, with your family, your friends. I'm going to do a mailing an email to the scholars with it because I know that a lot of them could use to hear it. And I actually made a note to myself to go back and rewatch it so I can get those QR codes and stuff because I didn't get them
Yes,
like
and
when it was coming by.
I can
But
send links if that's helpful too.
yeah. And I will just say, I also thought it was an excellent webinar, Whitney. We are so appreciative of having you
Thank you so
do this.
much.
It's great. And so the fact that we can have this and refer our people to it also is very important. So yes, if any of you have questions about the Chatfield Edge, you can reach out to me. That's David Hessen. My email is david.hessen@chatfieldedge.org. Through our website, you can get to me always, or my phone number, 513-875-3956. And we'd love to have you if it's mentoring, if it's volunteering, if you know of people who would be interested in being a scholar with the Chatfield Edge and working with us, we would love to have them as well. So we're just excited about continuing to grow our audience. So we have one more webinar scheduled for this academic year, and that's Tuesday, March 24th. Jeannie Judge, who is in the second row of my little screen, but right over there, Jeannie has a master's degree in creativity and innovation. And so she's going to be presenting on having a growth mindset and creative problem solving. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So watch your email for details about that one. And again, share about the webinars, share about us, share about all of it with your family and friends. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. And I think that is it for tonight.